Thanks. So this talk will be about our app AirGuard, but also a lot of background around it. So we start with the basics of offline finding and how it works in the current systems. So imagine you go somewhere and it's like, oh, I lost my MacBook. Where is it? Is it at a cafe? Is it in a train? Is it in the gym? And then you check Find My, and it's like, oh, okay, it's in the office. It's good, it's safe. But how does this work? So Find My is set up like this. Your devices, they have a connection, and they are paired to the same iCloud account. And when the MacBook is connected to a Wi-Fi network, then the iPhone will send a request over iCloud to your MacBook, and the MacBook forwards its location back to the iPhone. So it will always know where your devices are as long distance as it has a Wi-Fi connection. But what happens when you use the Wi-Fi connection? So your MacBook doesn't have a Wi-Fi connection, and then your iPhone will not be able to find that. In 2019, Apple introduced a new feature. It's called offline finding. In the beginning, now it's called the Find My network. And the Find My network works like this. It allows you to find your device even when it's offline and has no internet connection. So at first, you have your MacBook, it's without internet, and that realizes, oh, I don't have internet. So it starts sending out Bluetooth beacons that contain a public key. And this public key will be received by nearby Finder devices. These Finder devices are not only other iPhones, but also iPads with GPS are able to participate here and receive the public key, and then you're like, okay, there's someone who lost his Apple device, so let's get the GPS location, use the public key to do some fancy encryption, encrypt the location and upload it to Apple's server. So Apple will have an encrypted location here, and they will not be able to know where you are or from whom this location is. So you can take your iPhone and check, okay, where's my MacBook, and you download these encrypted locations to your iPhone and they get decrypted locally. So you now know again where is the MacBook, where did I lose the MacBook. So I want to go into a bit more details about how this Bluetooth beacon looks like. So in the top, I have marked the Bluetooth address, and the Bluetooth address basically contains the public key bytes from 1 to 5, and also like the first public key byte, but it's a bit scrambled, so it matches the Bluetooth format. And then there's some Apple IDs like the 4Z00, says okay, it's an Apple device, and then the next important thing here is that there's a status byte coming in that can send some status about your device. For AirTags, this is, for example, used to transmit the battery level, but also it's used to transmit the device state. So if it's set to 0, it's an Apple device that's actually using this offline finding technology. And then next, we have the rest of our public key bytes coming in here. Then we have the first public key, like the first byte of the public key again, because it had to be moved to the end again, because in the beginning there was not enough space with the Bluetooth address. And then there is some hint that's almost always zeros. Yeah, that's it. So it's a quite simple format. It's basically just the public key. But how is this public key generated? So it's the only 2 slides I have about cryptography. So I try to explain it in a simple way. So every device has master beacon keys. These master beacon keys are public-private key pair and shared secret keys, and they all are stored safely on your device. From these master beacon keys, it's possible to generate rolling keys. So at first, the secret key is used with a key derivation function and string update to generate new versions of the secret key. And then, in the next step, the secret key is then used with another key derivation function to generate 2 types of keys. And these 2 keys will then be used with your original private public key pair to generate a new private public key pair for every 15 minutes where your device is offline. So this continues, and basically all other devices are synchronized and they know which public key is being sent out at this time frame. And the encryption works like that. So we have the public key that is sent out, and then when the other device receives this public key, it's using that to generate its own ephemeral public-private key pair, then use a normal Diffie-Hellman key exchange method to generate a shared secret. And this shared secret is then put in some other key derivation function to get encryption key and an initialization vector. And then it's basically using AES to encrypt the location and also the accuracy. And then it attaches to this location report the public key that just used for this one time, and some timestamps and some metadata. So how does this look now in Apple's cloud database? In Apple's database, we basically have a very simple table that only has a public key ID. The public key ID is a hash of the public key that has been published. Then the date when this location report has been uploaded to Apple, and the location report, which also includes the public key that has been used to perform the Diffie-Hellman key exchange. So in 2020, 2019, we were reverse engineering this together with our students, and we were thinking, okay, is this actually secure, what Apple is doing here? And I want to talk with you about this now and what we have found at that time. So at first, the encrypted location reports, when you get them, it's obviously rather secure, because to decrypt them, you need to perform the same elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman, and no one else is able to get your private key for this, because you need a private key and only your devices have the private key stored. So the security here is basically based on this curve that is being used, so it's actually quite secure as long as the NIST curve here stays secure. But how about the keys? So I was telling you about this master beacon keys. They are actually encrypted, and they all share the same encryption key over all your devices, but this encryption key is securely stored in your iCloud keychain, which is also end-to-end encrypted between all your devices. So no one should be able to have access to that. So this is fine. Then let's look at the master beacon keys. I said they are encrypted, so it's not possible by anyone else to read them. They are stored on the file system, but you won't be able to retrieve the master beacon keys just by reading the file. So you need the encryption key. The file can be synchronized between all your devices just like that, so it's not big of a problem, and you can have a lot of master beacon keys if you have a lot of Apple devices. So that's also secure. But to actually make this thing fast and reliable, Apple was pre-computing the keys. So when you have your iPhone on the charger, then it's pre-computing the keys for the next 9 weeks or so, and also your MacBook does that. And these pre-computed keys are then stored on your file system in some file, which is basically just keys, one after another. And if you look at it, you think okay, this is some encrypted file. I don't know what it is, but I cannot really find anything in it. But actually, it's unencrypted, and there's no access control, so this is not secure. This issue is a bit problematic, because all these keys are readable on your file system, and what happens now if you install a malicious app on your MacBook? So you install this app, and this app is now able to read these keys. Okay, and then obviously the app has also access to the internet, so it can just transfer all the keys that the app has read to this attacker-controlled environment. And then the attacker has all your keys, and what can you do with it? Yeah, the Apple database is not protected, because Apple doesn't know which encrypted location reports belong to you, so you can access all location reports for all the keys that you have. So the attacker goes and downloads all the location reports, they're encrypted, but then he can use the keys that he stole from your MacBook to decrypt all the locations that have been, through offline finding, been received on your MacBook, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, all these devices support this. So you get not only your location of the MacBook, which would be already bad, you also get a location history of all your devices,
And the thing is, you might say, okay, but this is only when my device is offline, then it's actually using this technology. But all the devices get to become offline quite often. Let's imagine you're a MacBook at first, you take it from the office, put it in the backpack or something, and then you leave the office, then it doesn't have any Wi-Fi connection, so we'll start out sending these beacons. The iPhone actually does that also quite often, not only when you put it into airplane mode or something, it somehow loses cellular connection just for a second and just starts sending out these beacons. Then takes some time to stop it again. So same thing with your iPad or your Apple Watch. When they lose connection, they will always send out. So what's the problem here? Even though the attacker might have a malicious app that might not have access to anything on your device, he has your location history, and with that location history, he can actually identify who you are. So here in this graph, we basically took all the locations from 1 week, from all the devices that I have, and then we checked, like, okay, when have the reports been received at clusters of locations? So we saw, okay, there's one cluster at my home, which makes total sense, and there are reports like all over the time. So it's likely the home. Then there have been clusters of locations at the office place, and even if you don't have the location, you can see it here in the time span that we have, the red thing. It's just actually from 8 to 5 or something like. So it's perfect office time, so easily to identify. Then we have time I spent at my partner's place, which is sparse, but also around the whole clock, basically. And then time I spent at some friend's place. Then I always spend time at the boulder gym at the same time. So you could also see that it's always from 17 to 20 or something like that, and then when I was at my family's place. And when you have all these locations, it's really easy to identify people, because think about it, there's how many locations do you go where also another person is going? If you go from your home to the office, then it's probably not all your colleagues live in the same apartment complex that you are living in. So it's already really easy to differentiate which person this is. And actually, you need just like 3 to 5 locations that a person meets, visits from time to time, and regularly to identify a person. So this allows to identify people. This allows to find the most common locations, track people down. So is this actually fixed? Yes, it has been fixed. We reported this, and it has been fixed for the last release of macOS Catalina and the first release of macOS Big Sur at that time. And the way Apple fixed it is quite simple. They basically put a restriction on those files, moved them to a different folder, and said, okay, if you want to read these files, then you need to have a special entitlement signed on your app, and only the Find My app and all the daemons that handle this are also have access to these files. So if you try to read them now, you will just get like an error. So this is nice. This has been fixed. But now Find My has become a lot more relevant since the AirTags came in, because the AirTags are great. There's like this tiny device, you put it on all your things, and now you have the same things that, like the same features you get for losing your MacBook on everything, even if it's not from Apple, on your keys, on your bike, on your digital camera, in your backpack, on your umbrella, whatever. You can put them everywhere. They are super tiny, and you never have to lose anything. If someone is stealing something from you, you can maybe track it down, and there have been reports about that, so it's great. Here we can see, for example, a screenshot, and there's this Alan, and Alan has lost everything all over the city. Like his backpack is over there, then his bike is there, the umbrella is there, but the keys are still with him, at least something. But he can see that in real time, so he gets like updates. Okay, it's like here, location update is always set to now, so he knows that, okay, like now, like maybe 30 seconds ago, someone saw my umbrella in that street. It's still on the bus or something like that. So there are quite real-time location updates with that. So that's nice. So what should go wrong? Okay, then there came like a report where an influencer model has been tracked by an AirTag. She was in a bar somewhere, and someone slipped an AirTag into her coat, and then she luckily realized it before she came home. So otherwise, this person would have been able to tell where she is. And but it's just one person. Or, oh no, there's like more reports about this. And apparently it's also being used to track cars and steal them afterwards. So it's tracking people, tracking cars. There's like, okay, it's not really nice. So, but Apple has thought about this, right? So they have protection mechanisms for this. Of course they have. So for example, when you have an AirTag and you slip it into someone's backpack, it will make a sound after some time. Okay, it's like this. And it continues as long as you move with the AirTag, and then stops after like 30 seconds with the sound. And then it will replay the sound like every 3 to 6 hours. So that's nice, so you can be sure that no one slipped something in your pocket. But the problem is, okay, there are YouTube videos that tell you how to disable the sound on an AirTag, because people are also like, no, I don't want the sound on my bike's AirTag, because otherwise when it's getting stolen, the thief will realize, okay, there's an AirTag on it. And how long did it take them to find this out? Oh, like, okay, it's like 2 days after the AirTag has been released. So, okay. So that's not the best protection mechanism. So we were looking into what iOS is doing, because iOS actually has a really cool feature that tells you when an AirTag is following you for some time, and it even shows you the locations where you were going. So like all the times when the AirTag has been seen, it's shown here, and then you see all the time that it has followed you, so you can see, okay, from the airport to my home or whatever. Then you can actually see, okay, was it maybe someone in the train, or was it actually someone slipping an AirTag into me? And you get this notification. You can make it ring if it's not disabled, so it has actually some cool features here. But how does this work? We did some reverse engineering to find this out, and Apple is doing here quite some cool stuff. So they have this database. In this database, they put in all the AirTags and other devices they find. And this basically happens super often. So your iPhone is always scanning for Bluetooth, other Bluetooth devices, because there are exposure notifications, there are other Apple devices that interact with your Apple device, and so it will always basically scan and realize, okay, there's a new AirTag around. So this is getting into the database. Then it's also taking into account if you're currently moving, what is your status? Are you static, standing, or are you actually moving? It's getting your location updates quite often. And puts in like a people density scan, which is, I don't know what it does, because it's never executed, but it's somehow, there is something in this database what's called people density scan, and I believe it's basically scanning for Bluetooth and then looking, okay, how many devices are here, and if it's too many devices, then it's like, okay, like this person is in a crowd of people, so maybe they use that. It's also finding out if you're in a car, so that's also getting into the database. And then the state of your phone. Is it the screen on, off, and things like that? Are you connected to Wi-Fi? And then they have like 3 different detection algorithms they use to detect so-called suspicious devices. A suspicious device is a device that follows you. And these detection algorithms, I want to present you one of them because it's like a bit boring to go over 3 algorithms. This one is quite interesting because every time you stop with your iPhone somewhere, it triggers a feature in the location API which is called a visit. So your iPhone realizes you are currently visiting a location, and these visits are used to initiate scans or like use the data that has been received recently. So it's receiving all these AirTags during these visits and knows, okay, I have seen these 3 AirTags in the current visit and these 3 AirTags in the last visit, and then it just basically does an intersection and sees, okay, there's one AirTag that has been there all the time. In the middle, this one. Okay, so this AirTag in the middle, could be suspicious, but to be sure, they actually also check, has this AirTag been seen for at least 5 minutes? And has it followed me for at least like 400 meters? And did this happen, like, has the tracker been seen in the last 5 minutes? So it's not considering older trackers here in this detection algorithm. And when all these things evaluate to true, and this device is actually following you, then they say, okay, this is a suspicious device, and they mark it like that. And then you think like, okay, suspicious device, so you get a notification, that's it, bam. No, it's not like that. So when you have suspicious device, then it's basically, okay, are you currently at home? And then if you are, then you get a notification. So if you are with the suspicious device at your home and the person that actually tracks you can see where your home is, then you get immediately a notification. But if you're not, then Apple gets a bit like, okay, I'm not sure, should we like send notification? Could be a false alarm. So they're like, okay, let's wait. Let's see how long this suspicious device will stay with me. And then like in our test was like 4 hours. It's not really easy to find out through reverse engineering when this notification comes in, but basically they set a timer. Okay, like when this timer elapses, then they think like this algorithm is evaluating again, should we send a notification or not, and it might set another timer, and but after like 4 hours in actual testing, you might get a notification when this device is still around with you. So this is great. Like for iOS, you have protection against people trying to track you with AirTags. Nice, but what's actually with Android? So with Android, here comes AirGuard into play. But before I want to tell you about AirGuard, I want to tell you about what Apple did for Android, because there was a lot of negative press. So Apple was like, okay, there's like a lot of negative press. We have to do something for Android. So they developed a super simple Android app that has one button. It says scan. Then you scan. Then you find an AirTag, maybe. And when you found the AirTag, then you have to wait 10 minutes. So they want to ensure that this AirTag is still with you in 10 minutes. And then you can play a sound. That's it. That's all what the app can do. Had never been able to do more or less. It's just that you get maybe like information. You can click on some links how to deactivate an AirTag, but that's it. So very basic. But before even Apple has released this app, we came up with our own solution, which is kind of similar to what iOS does in the system. So we have developed the app called AirGuard, which has more than 280,000 downloads by now. And AirGuard works like this. You set up the app once, you give them the permissions to track your get your location in the background, to scan for Bluetooth devices, and then you don't have to think about it again. You just keep it on your phone, and from time to time, the app will be woken up by the Android system, and then it scans for devices in your environment and notifies you, like you can see here on the second screen. There are like notifications. Okay, so you see there's a device following you. It tells you, is it an AirTag? Is it a Find My device, like, for example, Chipolo or Pebblebee trackers? Or is it an Apple device that might be following you around? So you get these notifications, and you can see where it has been. So you also get the locations there connected with the paths. And we also added a risk evaluation. So when a tracker is following you for more than 1 day, then this risk level rises to a high risk, so that you are actually aware that this might be something suspicious going on. So how does our tracking detection work? So at first we do the scans. I just told you, like from time to time we do scans. In these scans we gather the MAC addresses of all AirTags that we find and other devices that are also trackers. We get the current location where you are, and we put that all into a database. And then in this database, after that, we put it into our tracking evaluation algorithm, and that's pretty simple. It goes over all the devices that has been seen in the last scan, and then checks, okay, has this device been following me for like more than 400 meters? Has this device been following me for more than 30 minutes? And how often have I seen that device? So we required that it has been seen at least 3 times. And when all this is true, we just send out the notification immediately. There's like no delay. When this evaluates to true, there's a notification. And we currently support the AirTag and other Find My-based trackers like Chipolo, also AirPods. They will also be recognized as AirPods. And also a thing we made earlier is called Open Haystack. It's basically creating your own AirTag, but we published that before the AirTags were available. So if you have such a thing trying to track you, you also get notified because it's using the same technology as an AirTag. And then recently we added also tile trackers because they're very popular in the US, and we don't want that people are getting stalked by them because now there are solutions for AirTags but nothing for tiles, so we added them. We're now also looking into other things. Yeah. And I already briefly explained about was talking about the risk levels. The risk levels are 3 levels, so you have low risk when there's no tracker following you at all, medium risk when you have seen one tracker and 1 day. But these can be false notifications, of course, because when you are in a train, then it might be that someone next to you is using an AirTag or so you get a notification. And high risk is when you get like notifications for several days. We also added a manual scan feature, which is a bit similar to what Apple does. So you can press on the scan button and then it scans for all the devices that are around. And if it's possible to play a sound, you can do that immediately. So there's no limit of 10 minutes that an AirTag has to have. It's a limit that has Apple set in their app. Yeah, it sounds like that. Okay, the cool thing about our app is also people are able to participate in our data evaluation study. Before I tell you about that, I want to show you how we evaluated our app to compare it to iOS. So we put it into like the most common places. We put AirTag into a coat pocket, we put one into a backpack, and we put one AirTag into a fuel cap of a car. And then we were going out with all these devices and checking how long does it take to get a notification. Here I can show you our results. So for the code scenario, when we went out when the AirTag was in a pocket and the AirTag was in a backpack, it was super fast. Like in under 30 minutes or like under 40 minutes, it was possible to send a notification and tell, okay, there's a device following you. With the car, it's a bit more difficult because when you don't drive for a long time, like over an hour or something, it might be that your Android device is not able to scan often enough, so you get a notification immediately. But we keep these notifications and this received devices in our database for 14 days, so we can always check if this device is appearing again. And when you then enter the car again, so you drive somewhere and then you drive back, then it will be detected, and this is why it took like 4 hours. For the iPhone, on the first way, we thought like, okay, we now got a notification from AirGuard after half an hour, but nothing from the iPhone. So I went back home, and then I got a notification immediately. So this is like the graph I was showing you before. You go home, and you get a notification immediately. With the second one, I was like, okay, I try to stay out as long as possible with the backpack scenario, and like after this 4 hours, I got a notification. But with the car, it's a different thing because the iPhone doesn't really remember all the trackers that it has found in like the past. So it somehow clears the database from time to time. It doesn't include trackers that it has been seen, like this one algorithm I was showing you. The tracker had to be seen in the last 5 minutes already, so it might not be like that. So if you take 2 short car rides that have some time in between, the iPhone might not recognize it. But it might be that on another car ride, the iPhone recognizes it and you get a notification. So one thing that's particularly problematic with the iOS implementation are these self-made trackers that we made, because they are ignored. Basically, you can see in the logs, okay, there's this tracker, it might be suspicious, and then there's the next log, no, it's ignored, it's an Apple device. And that's just because when we made this, there were no other trackers, so we copied how the Apple devices work. And the Apple devices were sending status byte 00, and when the status byte is 0, like these trackers are doing, the iPhone is like, oh, okay, let's ignore it. It's not a tracker that actually tracks you, it's just like an Apple device of someone else around. And that's a problem. This has been already found by other researchers, but we were able to replicate that, and also we were able to see that and reverse engineer it in Apple's code that is actually actively ignored. And also, the app that Apple offers for Android actively ignores all Apple devices, so you also won't be able to find them. But AirGuard does that. AirGuard finds them. AirGuard tells you about it. So if you have an Android device, you will be safe. Now we'll come to our real-world observations. So people were voluntarily able to share anonymous data with us, and that data included things like, okay, did I receive a notification? Did I find a beacon? And which devices, how many devices have I found over the last day, and so on. And with that, 38,000 people participated until March, and about 11 million Bluetooth advertisements have been in our database. I tried to update the data for this talk, but the problem was now there's so much data in our MySQL database that it never finished generating the new graphs. So like I have to clean up the database first to see how it changed. One thing that we saw is, okay, from all the devices found, it's mostly Apple devices. This makes sense because maybe you remember from Yiska's talk, an Apple device is changing this public key every 15 minutes, and the AirTag doesn't do that. The AirTag changes the public key once a day. So there might be lying one iPhone around which doesn't have an internet connection, and AirGuard will detect it as a new iPhone every time it scans. But the AirTag will be the same AirTag. When we then see devices that were actually sending a tracking notification, we see that's mostly AirTag, not mostly AirTags, also mostly Apple devices, but a lot of AirTags. At that state, we believe that most Apple device notifications are false positives, or people having multiple devices and running around with them. The problem is like how AirGuard is designed. It is was designed in the past. We updated this, but it was expecting that Apple devices change their public key every 15 minutes. And if they don't do that, and somehow their Apple algorithm doesn't update the public key as often, then they will send a tracking notification if they are following you for some time. So this is where all these false positives come from. But we can see that AirTags are also generating, like they have a bigger percentage here. And we were also adapting our algorithm that we now expect that an Apple device changes the ID like every 2 hours, so it has to follow you for quite a long time to actually trigger notification. One other thing that we realized is like, okay, when there's actually a notification being sent and that's you're being warned about, then this RSSI values are actually lower, so the devices tends to be closer to the people than when we compare it to devices that were not sending a notification. So that's an indicator that these devices were actually around and following. And obviously we also got, or not obviously, but nicely, we got reviews on Google Play from people telling us that they were actually being tracked and our app helped them to find the tracker, or they were expecting something, installed our app, and then after 1 day or so they found the tracker in their car. Just recently we got also an email of someone who got out of a lot of like personal trouble, and then they also found out that they were being tracked by 2 AirTags and were just able to fix that with our app. So that's really nice positive feedback here. And you can also send feedback over the app. So if you are in the app, you can, and you get a notification, you can say, okay, I found this tracker, it was attached to my clothes or my backpack, I found it in a bike or car, and it's not many people are doing that, but from our reports, we were able to see that 8 people were reporting it on a car, and 4 people in backpack or bag, and like 1 on clothes and bike. So is this actually the solution? Nah, I don't think so, because now we have like 100,000, 120,000 active users that are using our app, but obviously people then deinstall the app after some time when they realize, okay, I'm not being tracked. How long do you keep this app on your phone? It also uses some battery. It can never be optimized as good as its OS level integration, and an OS level integration would also help all people and not just the people who are aware of the issue. So you have to be aware of the issue, then you have to decide to install an app. It might work for more cases than the iOS tracking detection, but the iOS tracking detection at least serves everyone. So, yeah. What we think is what would be the best solution if it stays like it is now would be an OS level integration, obviously, and then this has to support all kinds of trackers that are currently out there and could be used for malicious things. Also, we think that minimum standards for trackers should be a thing. Like an AirTag makes a sound, but if you have a tile tracker or Samsung SmartTag, they don't make any sound after like days following you. So that's actually a problem. And there should be minimum standards that everyone should follow when they design the tracker. So what comes next? We currently just optimize the scanning and are going to work onto that because we want to detect Samsung SmartTags as well. The only problem here is that they are following basically like the iPhone pattern. They're changing their MAC address and identifiers every 15 minutes, so it's really difficult to be sure that it's actually the same Samsung SmartTag that you saw an hour ago is the same that you see now because it has changed the ID 4 times in that time. We work on an iOS app that actually is more focused on Samsung SmartTags and tile trackers. And it's actually the beta here already is working quite well. And we are currently doing a survey between our app users to find out what big of a problem is this stalking at the moment actually, so that we get an overview about how many people are affected by this, how can we help them better, what is their need, and yeah, just to get a broad overview. Yeah, and I want to thank Milan Stute, who was the first postdoc who I worked with at CMO, and then later Jiska Klassen, with whom I'm working currently quite a lot, and then our 2 students, Niklas Bittner and Tim Kornhuber, who have contributed to both works here quite a lot. And now it's time for question and answers, and I'm happy to answer them.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Questions? Yes.
I have a question when it comes to the bike use case, bicycle. Where I protect my bicycle with an AirTag. You said that if an AirTag follows you, it makes a sound after a while, but also the thief can notice this sound. How do you protect that? Is it possible?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but like an AirTag has not been designed to be like the theft protection #1, and here I think it's more important to protect the people and than to protect your belongings. I mean, it's a bike. It might be a really expensive bike, but if it's gone, it's not like that someone is really affected by this, only money-wise.
Because they sell it for thief protection, but it's a different use case.
Yeah, but it's like it has not been designed to be like the number one thief protection tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Test. You
hear me? I can hear you.
All right. Thanks for your talk. Thanks for sharing. How about the Android 12 background optimization? How reliable is your scanning mechanism when?
Oh yeah, I got a lot of worse with Android 12. Yeah, so with Android 11 we were able to scan every 15 minutes really reliably. And now it depends on what your device does, how often you're allowed to scan. So if you have your device out, then basically the system can decide that now it's the time to do a scan, but it's like when you have it, for example, at your night desk in the evening or something like that, then you won't get any scans for like 2 hours or something like that. So, but on average, we get at least one every hour. Most of the time, it's like 2 or 3 scans every hour.
All right, thank you.
All right, any more questions? Then, thank you. Oh, there's one.
Hi, thanks for the talk. I wonder what about the precision of the scanning with Android devices? Because you have here, in the contrary to Apple devices, the possibility to tune the precision or location precision. So how does it affect the location, the scannability of the AirTag, at least?
So
Thanks.
you mean when I scan how precise it is
Yeah.
that the AirTag is actually close to me?
Exactly, yeah.
So we don't look into that, how close it is actually in our tracking detection. So it's basically if it's there, then we suspect that it's close. We only scan for like 8 seconds, but with the highest scanning resolution you can set in Android. And with that, we were able to find most of our trackers that were in like 5-meter range.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Hi, one question. If you have the other tags that are not from Apple, then and they change the ID every 15 minutes, then the solution is not working at all?
Yeah, for the 15 minutes problem, like Samsung Smart Tags do, it's not really perfect. There is no really perfect solution because you won't be able to identify that this tracker you see now is the same tracker you saw like some time ago. You can only make some assumptions. Maybe it's about the same RSSI value, and that's the things we are now looking into. So if there is a device that's around the same RSSI value and you have seen it multiple times, then you might get a notification saying like, okay, there has been seen Samsung trackers around you, and then you have to decide on your own if you want to disable detecting Samsung trackers completely, for example, or if you want to keep these on because it will never be as accurate.
Okay. And one comment, if you show a permanent notification, then your app can stay on for scanning. For example, K9 Mail is doing that.
Yeah, we know that, but it's somehow blocking user interface, and also the other problem is then it uses a lot more energy when the app stays awake. There is actually another researcher who did a very similar thing, but it's not published and the Android App Store, his app, but his app was focusing on doing foreground scans and permanent scans, and then deriving like graph theory if devices are actually following you. So this might be more accurate, but it's like he had in his paper, like it was using 10% of your energy like in an hour. So it's not really worth using that.
All right, then thank you very much, Alexander, again. And then we will continue with the next talk in a couple of minutes.